My name is Ryan Simmons. The beginning of my life story starts with the early loss of my mother. Having lost my mother to illness right after I was born, my dad ended up raising me on his own. Dad ran a beer brewing company that he had inherited from my grandfather. From a young age, I used to help out with my father's work. My earliest memory is of clinging to my father's back as he walked around the brewery and factory, with the aroma of beer wafting through the air. I vaguely remember my father diligently stirring the tanks with a serious expression. Perhaps because I often went to the factory like that, at some point I found myself wanting to take over. I would grab the hop with my small hands and carefully watch it. I watched my father's skillful work and tackled the tasks with a serious expression. Sometimes, I would join in mixing the yeast, following along with my father's instructions. My father's smile filled my heart with joy. "Hey Dad, what's this?" "This is called hop, Ryan. Remember that it's essential for making beer." "What's malt?" "Yeast is a mold that ferments rice. Simply put, it's a magical creature that turns malt into beer. That's what creates the flavor of the alcohol." "Wow, magic, huh? That's interesting, Dad. Okay, I'll help out again today." "Thanks, kiddo." "All right, want to try washing some hops here?" "Yeah, I'll give it a try." And so, from a young age by my father's side, I took an interest in tasks like polishing hops and making yeast, dedicating myself to them seriously, and gradually learned the techniques and processes of beer brewing. My father's factory was always full of energy. Seeing the employees laughing together as they devoted themselves to making beer, I too dreamed of working there in the future. While my father was passionate about his work, he was also a kind-hearted person who treated his employees like family. However, this led to difficult circumstances for the business financially. In order to prioritize corporate profits, I believe he should have been more ruthless in cutting employee wages and laying people off. But precisely because my dad cherished each and every employee like family, he couldn't make such drastic decisions. So even though I was the CEO's only son, far from being wealthy, I lived a life that was poor compared to my classmates. Even so, I never felt any dissatisfaction with that, and in fact, I even thought my dad was cool for being that way. And so, while living in poverty, I spent happy days and reached the age to enter high school. Upon entering high school, I joined the tennis club's provisional membership, excitedly stepping onto the tennis court in the new environment. As someone who had continued playing tennis since junior high school, I was looking forward to playing in a new team and setting. However, that excitement was short-lived, as there was already one club member standing on the court. He had a flashy appearance, holding a brand new racket and wearing a brand new branded shirt. Seeing him standing on the court as if it were only natural, at first I assumed he must be a senior. I greeted him and started preparing to enter the court, but he looked down on me with an arrogant attitude and made a haughty remark. "Hey, are you a freshman? Mind if I take a look at your racket for a sec?" A bit bewildered by his words, I handed over my racket. "This? Here, I've been using it since junior high school, so it's pretty beat up." He looked down at my racket and said with a scornful laugh, "Huh, a beat-up racket from junior high school. Guess we can't expect much in terms of skill from you then." Even as I felt anger at his rude comment, I feigned composure. Just then, a few seniors came over together and called out to us. "Oh, are you guys perhaps new members hoping to join the club? That's great to have you come check it out right after entering school. Hello, my name is Jack Thompson. Nice to meet you." The club member who had made the rude remark to me greeted the senior. I was surprised by that. I couldn't believe this arrogant guy was actually my classmate. Realizing he wasn't a senior, my anger welled up anew. And that guy, Jack Thompson, continued to rub me the wrong way at every turn after that. I dedicated myself to daily club practice while trying to avoid interacting with Jack as much as possible. Then one time, a senior called out to me, "Hey, Jack and Ryan, come over here for a sec." He spoke to us with a serious expression. "The official matches are starting soon, but actually, one of our regulars got injured. So I'm thinking of adding either Jack or Ryan to the lineup at the last minute. I know it's sudden, but could you guys play a one-set match right now?" Surprised by the sudden request, I still accepted the proposal, and Jack agreed to it as well. I headed to the court, gripping my racket tightly and steeling my determination to fight. As the match began, Jack and I started intensely rallying the ball back and forth. I utilized my experience from junior high school and all the skills I had to corner my opponent. Jack also fought back desperately, and the rallies grew more and more intense. Eventually, the match reached its conclusion after a fierce rally. I hit a magnificent shot, and Jack failed to return it, sending the ball out of bounds. I won. As the court fell silent, the senior acting as the referee declared my victory. Breathing heavily but with a natural smile on my face, I extended my hand to Jack. However, Jack stood there for a while, his expression unable to hide his frustration, and he walked away ignoring my hand. His eyes were filled with a mix of impatience and anger, and he was clearly shaken. As I watched his retreating back, I felt a bit of tension inside, but I still won the regular spot with a sense of confidence and fulfillment. However, Jack's already poor attitude towards me only got worse after that day. He continued to maintain his arrogant and self-centered demeanor, and it became usual for him to mock and provoke me during practice and club activities. And then a certain incident occurred. I had stepped out of the court for a water break during practice. But right at that moment, it seemed Jack had tripped over my racket that was leaning against the edge of the court, knocking it over and even stepping on it. I don't know if it was an accident or intentional, but as a result, the racket ended up cracked. But even though Jack knew he had cracked my racket, he tried to walk away with a condescending attitude. "Hey, wait. You did that, didn't you?" Jack ignored my accusation and shrugged his shoulders. An arrogant smile appeared on his face as if to provoke my anger. "You mean the crack in that racket? But hey, it's a beat-up second-hand one you've been using since junior high school, right? Wasn't it already cracked from the start? Well, this is a good opportunity for you to buy a proper racket, don't you think, Ryan?" His words brought my anger to the brink of exploding, but I tried to stay calm and contain my rage. A few days later, Jack appeared in front of me with an expensive brand new racket. Without apologizing at all for breaking my racket, he spoke to me in a haughty manner. "Here, I got you a new racket. It's way pricier than the one you were using before, right? Well, keep practicing while being grateful for my generosity." At his words, indignation and humiliation welled up in my heart. However, I didn't let my emotions get the better of me in that moment and calmly accepted his words. Getting any more involved with Jack would only be a source of maximum stress, so I made an effort to avoid talking to him as much as possible. Even in the midst of that, I resolved to cherish my bonds with my tennis clubmates and other friends and live positively. I decided to stay strong against Jack's harassment, focus on improving my tennis skills, and enjoy my high school life. But then, a turning point came for me. My dad collapsed. My dad's health suddenly deteriorated when I was in my second year of high school. Initially, I noticed something was wrong when I stopped seeing his usual energetic self. Dad found it difficult to go to work as usual and instead spent his days resting at home. At first, I thought it was just a mild cold, but my dad's symptoms gradually worsened. The doctor's diagnosis was unexpected. He was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome. When I received that news, deep sadness and anxiety came up in my heart. My dad had worked hard and had been a supportive presence for me. Having my dad collapse was a huge blow to me. One day after school, I didn't participate in tennis club practice and instead went home to help with the family business. And that started happening more and more, to the point where there were even weeks when I couldn't show up to club activities at all. Perhaps worried about me, my friends called out to me during breaks in practice. "Hey, Ryan, what's up with practice today?" I replied with my head down. "Sorry, I have to go home again today." "What? Again? Helping with the family business? That must be rough, but you've been absent a lot lately. Don't tell me, are you planning to quit the club? Isn't there some way to work it out?" My friends tried to understand my decision, but seeing me unable to hide my sadness, they still looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Just then, Jack appeared. Seeing my expression, a gleeful smile appeared on his face. Well, Ryan, heading home again to help out. Looks like you're guaranteed to lose your regular spot at this rate." His words weighed even heavier on my heart. As if seeing right through my weakness, He made no attempt to hide the mockery in his eyes. I avoided his gaze and could only hang my head in silence. As days like this continued, I made the decision to quit the club. I loved the club and tennis was important to me, but helping my dad and the company was even more important. Still, my heart was heavy. And so, I left the club, and my days became filled with going straight home after school and helping with work. And by that point, unlike many of my friends, I had already decided to take over the family business after graduating high school. Having lost my mother and lived with just my dad, I felt it was my responsibility to protect and continue the family business. I had a chance to talk to my dad about my future plans, and we discussed it quietly. My dad respected my decision and expressed his gratitude at the same time. "Ryan, I'm truly grateful that you've decided to take over the family business. Let me just say, it's not like I'm inheriting it reluctantly. I take pride in that work." "I see, that's good then. Considering your future, continuing your education was also an option. But the fact that you're dedicating yourself to the family like this is more than enough." At my father's words, I was moved. Having lost my mother and struggled to get by with just my father, the conviction that supporting my family was my mission was deeply engraved in my heart. But directly expressing that to my dad was still a bit embarrassing for me. Yeah, instead of saying stuff like that, "Hurry up and get better. Then I can go have fun." Hearing that, my dad, looking so different from before with his sunken cheeks and wrinkles, laughed. After graduating high school, my position became that of CEO, even if only formally. When I decided to take over the family business, the company's employees warmly welcomed me. The employees working at the brewery and factory all adored my dad, and I had been in their care since I was little. They were all good-natured old guys, and a friendly atmosphere permeated the workplace. In the factory, the work of brewing beer using malt continued just as in the past. The employees skillfully and painstakingly made beer. As I watched over their work, I was impressed by their passion and techniques. In the brewery too, veteran artisans were dedicating themselves to brewing. They carefully brewed beer, preserving traditional methods while also incorporating new techniques. Their skills were the company's treasure, and I had deep respect for their approach to their work. While helping out with the work at the factory, I enjoyed interacting with the employees. Rather than just co-workers, they were like family, always helping and supporting each other. One day, while working at the brewery, one of the employees called out to me, "Young master." "Oh, sorry, I mean president now. Please continue to look after us." At his words, I thanked him with a smile. "The pleasure is all mine. I look forward to working with you." The company boasted top-class technology and quality in beer brewing, and the employees were all sincere and trustworthy people. However, a harsh reality awaited in terms of management. In fact, the situation was becoming more and more difficult. There were several factors contributing to the company's poor performance. First, paying employee salaries placed a significant burden on the business. Maintaining top-quality beer brewing required appropriate compensation for skilled artisans, which strained the company's expenses. Furthermore, my own lack of knowledge in marketing and business management was one of the challenges the company faced. While I had some knowledge of and confidence in beer-making techniques and product quality, I lacked the ability to adapt to changing market trends and customer needs. This became a bottleneck in expanding sales channels and developing new sales strategies. As a result, the company was in a financially difficult position, and management was unstable. This situation gradually became more and more dire. The threat of bankruptcy was becoming a reality, and I was scrambling to turn the company around. While busy with daily sales, production management, and communicating with employees, anxiety and impatience swirled in the back of my mind. Amidst the busyness and challenges of management, I realized I was about to turn 30. Then one day, an unexpected invitation arrived. It was an invitation to a high school reunion. As I approached the milestone of turning 30, it was an opportunity to reconnect with old friends. Along with joy, I also felt a bit of mixed emotions. Reunion. The reunion was not only a chance to reunite with the past, but also a place to reflect on myself, success and failure, dreams and reality. Carrying it all, I would be returning to the stage of my high school days. On the day of the event, as I arrived at the venue, the smiles of my old friends greeted me. While seeing familiar faces, I found myself reflecting on my current situation, the company facing management difficulties, my father's illness, and my own inner struggles. All of that shaped who I was now. Some of my acquaintances called out to me. They expressed concern about how I'd been doing lately, but I couldn't bring myself to answer honestly. I felt uncomfortable divulging my hardships. In a corner of the venue, while talking with old friends, I spotted Jack Thompson. He looked exactly the same as before, dressed in an expensive suit, walking around the room with a confident attitude. Seeing him brought back old grudges, and a faint sense of discomfort lingered in my heart. "Oh, is that you, Ryan? What are you doing here? I never thought we'd meet again in a place like this." Jack's cold voice reached me, and I felt a hint of displeasure. "Yeah, well, it's a reunion after all. Figured I should at least show my face," I replied calmly, but inside I felt a bit bewildered about meeting Jack again. "I never imagined you'd be in a place like this. I mean, you ran away from the club back then, didn't you? If it were me, I'd be too ashamed and sorry to show my face in front of my old friends." Jack taunted me with a provocative smile. As his words drew the gazes of those around us, I maintained a composed demeanor while internally grappling with complicated feelings. I had my own struggles. "Well, I don't expect you to understand. You haven't changed at all, I see. Still only capable of flaunting your status and wealth." At my words, Jack's expression momentarily stiffened, but he quickly regained his smirk and spoke again, looking down on me. "Well, I don't expect you to understand me either. To become a success like me, you need money and power. The pain of having those is something a poor person like you wouldn't get. But it's strange. The drink that tasted so good just a moment ago suddenly seems unappetizing when a poor person like you is in front of me. Becoming someone like you isn't a goal of my life. Enough, get out of my sight," I quietly responded, rejecting Jack's narrow-minded way of thinking. At those words, a hint of displeasure appeared on Jack's face, but he quickly regained his composure and walked away to talk to other friends, pretending to ignore me. The reunion had a second party planned, but feeling dejected by Jack's presence, I decided to go home for the day. On the way home, I was walking through the city at night. In a fleeting moment, I noticed a woman collapsed on the ground. The woman, who appeared to be around 60 years old, was lying on the ground, looking unsteady and unable to stand up. I hurried over and approached the woman, asking with concern, "Excuse me, are you all right?" The woman nodded slightly, her expression pained. Still, I couldn't help worrying about her condition. "Did something happen? Are you feeling unwell?" The woman slowly nodded, seeming unable to speak. Even so, she stood up unsteadily and asked me to help her get home. "I'm terribly sorry, but could you please escort me home? It's not too far from here." I was surprised but quickly nodded and supported the woman. I immediately called the taxi company and helped her into the vehicle. When I asked for the destination, she told the driver her home address in a small voice. As I took a taxi to the woman's house, I started to look around, and I was astonished by the grandeur of the mansion we arrived at. As the gate opened, a magnificent European-style mansion appeared. Even more surprising was the nameplate on the woman's house, which read Thompson. Could it be the mother of that Jack Thompson? Given the area she lived in and the uncommon surname, it wasn't hard to imagine she was the mother of that hateful man. Still, despite my surprise, I fulfilled my role of escorting the woman to her home. She entered the house, looking exhausted, and her husband came out to greet us instead. The husband greeted me with a kind smile and expressed his gratitude. "Thank you very much. I apologize for the trouble my wife caused you." I politely smiled and responded to the husband's words. "Not at all. I'm honored to have been of help. Now, if you'll excuse me." "Oh no, we must offer you some kind of appreciation. Although it's already so late today, we'd like to contact you again to express our gratitude properly. So could we please have your contact information?" I repeatedly declined, but the husband wouldn't take no for an answer, so I ended up giving him my phone number. And with that, I left the mansion, thinking to myself, who would have thought something like this could happen? As I walked home, the next day, I received a call from Jack's mother. She thanked me again and informed me that her health had completely stabilized. She insisted on doing something to repay me and wouldn't back down, so I eventually accepted her dinner invitation. After work at the brewery settled down, I headed to the restaurant Jack's mother had reserved. She greeted me with a smile at the entrance. "Mr. Simmons, thank you for coming despite your busy schedule." "No, thank you for inviting me. I'm actually a bit embarrassed to receive thanks just for escorting you home." "Please don't say that. Mr. Simmons, you truly saved my life. This restaurant is actually one that I run. I hope it suits your tastes." With that, she led me inside and gestured for me to sit in the relaxed atmosphere. I looked around the restaurant, impressed by its quality and ambience. Actually, that night, I collapsed due to exhaustion from overworking. I couldn't hide my surprise, but was simply relieved that Jack's mother's health had recovered. That must have been rough. "Please don't overdo it. But you manage this restaurant, so you must be very busy." "Thank you. I'm actually involved in managing several restaurants and companies, not just this one. I'm not young anymore, so I need to take it a bit easier with work. But even so, you really helped me out, Mr. Simmons. I'm truly grateful. That's why I invited you today, thinking there might be something I could do for you." "No way. Just having this fancy meal is more than enough." "Please don't say that. I don't think a meal like this can fully repay my debt. Mr. Simmons, if there's anything, please don't hesitate to let me know." I thought for a moment and then had a sudden idea. "Actually, my company produces beer. If it's not too much trouble, would it be possible for you to carry our beer at your restaurant?" "Oh, of course, it's fine if that's not feasible." She nodded with interest. "Beer, huh? That's intriguing. While this is an Italian restaurant, I've always thought beer has a high affinity with it. In that case, could I visit your brewery and factory another day? I'd like to sample a few varieties there if possible." I was surprised that such a wish could be granted, and even more delighted by her generous offer. "Of course. Please do come. We'll prepare the most delicious ones for you." She smiled contentedly, and we decided on a date. Later, Jack's mother visited the brewery and factory with me, where she would taste several types of beer. As she savored the beer brewed with dedication by the brewery's artisans, an expression of emotion appeared on her face. "This is truly magnificent. I've never encountered such profound and flavorful one before." "Thank you. Not to toot my own horn, but our artisans work diligently every day. We're confident our beer can hold its own against any other." Mrs. Thompson was thoroughly impressed and proceeded to tour the brewery with me, listening intently to the processes and manufacturing methods. After the brewery tour, she proposed serving beer at her restaurant. On another day, a meeting was arranged to discuss introducing beer at the restaurant she managed. The meeting took place at a different high-end restaurant operated by Mrs. Thompson. Despite my nervousness, I was excited about the possibility of providing our company's products to restaurants. She, on the other hand, seemed to be looking forward to the potential of a new business partnership. During the meeting, there was a lively discussion about the compatibility of Mrs. Thompson's cuisine with my beer. Not only her but also experienced chefs and head chefs proposed ideas for dishes that would pair well with beer, and I explained the characteristics and flavors of our company's products. "What kind of dishes do you think this beer would go well with?" "Well, our products are known for its elegant aroma and rich flavor. We believe it pairs well with light fish dishes and delicate seafood preparations. In that case, we could offer it for special occasions and seasonal dishes." The meetings were held repeatedly, and gradually, both parties' opinions aligned, leading to the decision to include my beer on the menu of Mrs. Thompson's restaurant. Afterward, she and I continued to discuss the details of providing beer. In addition to consulting about the beer served at the restaurant, we also began discussing its branding and sales strategies. Mrs. Thompson utilized her experience to propose strategies that would maximize the appeal of my products. She seemed to be considering producing special local beer to create a product that would resonate with more customers. The special beer offered a new flavor and style different from traditional beer, with the potential to appeal to younger generations and overseas markets. The special beer is an attractive product that allows people to enjoy a new flavor and sparkling sensation. It will be intriguing for our restaurant's customers as well. What do you say, Mr. Simmons? If you're up for it, shall we take on this new challenge together? I'll fully support you with my expertise. It's a very generous offer, but why are you doing so much for me? I feel bad that you're going this far just for escorting you home when you collapsed. Don't misunderstand, Mr. Simmons. I'm also a proper businesswoman. I wouldn't go this far just to return a favor. I simply see potential in you and the beer your company produces. I'm dealing with you as an equal business partner, okay? Those words gave me immense inspiration, joy, and the energy to keep striving. And so, Mrs. Thompson and I conducted a detailed examination of the manufacturing methods and ingredient selection for the special beer. I collaborated with the brewery's technicians to develop the production process for the special beer, continuing trial and error to create the optimal product. After months of research and experimentation, my employees and I completed the recipe for the ideal special beer. This special beer was characterized by its delicate aroma and refreshing effervescence, receiving high praise from many tasters. At a tasting event held at Mrs. Thompson's restaurant, it generated a significant response, with many customers showing interest in the new product. Based on this positive feedback, Mrs. Thompson and I decided to begin full-scale production and sales of the special beer. We continued to have enthusiastic discussions about new business developments. In the midst of that, by chance, her son Jack himself entered the restaurant. "You, Ryan. What are you doing here?" I turned around at the sound of Jack's voice, a surprised expression on my face. This reunion with him was unexpected. "Oh, Jack. I'm currently discussing a new business venture with your mother." Jack looked surprised but gradually regained his composure and made inappropriate remarks toward me. "I see. I had heard something about it, but to think someone like you is a business partner. Has my mother lost her ability to judge people in her old age? You're dealing with beer, right? I'm worried about the taste and quality if it's made by a poor person." I was about to get angry at Jack's comment, but before that, Mrs. Thompson quietly stood up and spoke to her son in a stern tone. "What in the world are you saying? Mr. Simmons is my valued business partner. Don't be rude." "Goodness, really? I'm sorry, Mr. Simmons. I'm confident in my abilities as a businesswoman, but it seems I was third-rate when it came to raising my child. I've been reflecting daily on how I must have gone wrong in raising him, but to think I raised someone who would say such impolite things. Jack, you, get out of this restaurant right now. I have some things to consider regarding your future." Surprised by the force of his mother's words, Jack showed a considerably shaken expression. His attitude and complexion completely changed, and he quietly left the restaurant with his tail between his legs. Several months later, my company had achieved new developments and was growing steadily. Thanks to new contracts with clients and the success of the special beer, the company's profits increased dramatically, and the employees were full of energy. One day, as I was absorbed in work at the brewery's office, my dad quietly entered. His expression was gentle, and he seemed satisfied. "Dad, what brings you here?" "Ryan, I wanted to talk to you about something. I know you're busy, but hear me out for a bit." I listened to my father's words with interest. "Lately, when I look at the company's performance, I can see that your efforts are bearing fruit. You've grown remarkably since taking over the brewery." I was moved by my father's words and showed a humble smile. "Dad, you don't have to say that." Dad looked me in the eye and continued, "You've accomplished more than I ever expected. If your mother were alive, she would be overjoyed to see how much you've grown." Tears welled up in my eyes. My father's words carried immense weight for him. "Dad, don't say stuff like it's the end. This company still has a long way to go, you know. Please, I'm begging you to live a long life." Dad smiled contentedly and held my hand. "Yeah, you're right. You're taking on new challenges again, aren't you? As long as you keep moving forward like that, I can kick the bucket just yet." We laughed together like that. The soft spring sunlight pouring in through the window warmly enveloped us, as if giving its blessing.